3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome back to the RGVSports.com RGV Hoops podcast. We are here for the final time before our all-area teams are announced because we are going to recap Edinburg Vela's trip to the state tournament and their loss to Lancaster, unfortunately. Still obviously a great season for the SaberCats, so we'll get into what happened in that game, if they gave them their best shot, what went right, what went wrong, and where they're going next season. To help me do that, I have the two guys who were at that game last week. I have Mario Aguirre, our boys basketball beat writer.
Hello, Greg.
And I have first-time podcast guest, sort of. You might have overheard him on some of the football shows. Saul Berrios-Thomas, our page designer. How are you doing, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
We are going to call him S-Dog for most of the show because that's the habit that I got into, and I don't know if he even likes that or not, but I can't break it now, so that's about how this is going to go. So let's get into the game. Lancaster 79, Edinburg Vela 58. The biggest things that I saw looking at the stats were that Lancaster out-rebounded Vela 35-19 and hit 67.4% from inside the arc, which is pretty good. That's what you're looking for. Mario, was that the story of the game? Is there something else you'd point to right off the bat?
That was the biggest thing, and a lot of that, had to do with their height. One of the bonuses, if you want to point to, I guess one of the positives for Vela was that they wanted to get Lancaster to shoot a lot of outside shots, and they did. They shot 10 of them. They only made 2.
That's not that many, though.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that's good for a team that doesn't really shoot that much, and especially considering that Lancaster had the size advantage, so there was really no reason for them to take a low percentage shot from outside. But Vela tried to do its best to keep them from pounding the ball inside, but Lancaster did nonetheless. They did a really good job too. Like a lot of times they would just throw the ball at the rim and have their 6'9" post score from underneath. So it's not like they gave it to him far away from the basket and he had to work his way in. They just tossed the ball inside and he scored a career high in points in that game. He, the 6'9" guy, his name is Nate Morris. Yeah.
I believe he had 17 points and 8 rebounds.
Yeah. Was
he the biggest individual player issue, or is there somebody else you would point to? Because he had 17 and 8 rebounds on 8 of 10 shooting, which is pretty efficient.
Yeah, he was it. In talking with the coach the day before, he was saying how Nate didn't really have much of an offensive game, and then this season for his senior year, they were trying to develop that side a little bit more. And I figured that would be a plus for Edinburg Vela because maybe there'd be a chance that they wouldn't rely for him. They wouldn't rely on him as a scorer. But then it turns out they really looked for him a lot. Last week against Vela, again 8 of 10 from inside, and really I think was the difference against them. They had no answer for him. Vela's next tallest player was 6'3", so Vela had a hard time trying to guard him, even though they sent 2 or 3 players at him to try to defend him.
S-Dog, did you feel like the inside play with the rebounding and the Lancaster scoring in the paint was the biggest factor, or is there something else you might point to?
Yeah, I will say the rebound game started off close, and it got a little worse towards the end. It was only even like 19-10 Lancaster at halftime, and I think it got worse towards the end of the second half. So Vela was hanging at first, but I think just at the end of the day they couldn't keep up with the size and the athleticism of the Lancaster players. So I think that was a big difference. I will say too that the Lancaster backcourt played really well. Their 2 guards, Barrett and Durham, they each had 4 assists, and they were facilitating the ball well. And I think they really allowed Morris to score all those points because, he wasn't getting those baskets on his own. It was because he was getting great passes when he was in the perfect position.
On the Vela side of thing, what jumped out to me that if they were going to win this game was that they would have to hit a lot of threes. And going 11 of 25 is pretty good. I think that's about the best you could ask for, I would think. Did you feel like Vela played the best game they could play in this one?
Yeah, only because I didn't see them hanging around for too long, and I think within the first quarter they were still kind of hanging in there. 3-pointers wise, I think they've had better games than 11 of 25, but considering that defense that they were going up against,
you don't shoot better than 44% very often, I wouldn't think.
I mean,
they're pretty good, but I'll click around Max Prep, so you keep talking.
Yeah, I just think Vela is a little smart in the 3-point attempts they take. It's mostly Hector Ruiz and Ryan Garza who take those. It's not like the whole team is hoisting 3-pointers, so that stat doesn't really stand out too much to me. I just think the biggest thing with them, they didn't have a good shooting game overall from the field as well. They just seemed outmatched the whole way through, and I mean, Coach Rios said as much as going into the game or after the game how he knew that they were overmatched and how their best chance was to try to get them to shoot threes and keep them away from the inside. But I don't know. I mean, they trailed at the end of the first quarter, and the stat sheet showed that Vela was leading. Their only lead was at 3-2, but they actually led 9-8. And then Lancaster's top player got hurt. They hit 2 threes in a row, but then Lancaster pushed it back up. So that was really Vela's last shot midway through the second quarter, trying to keep things competitive.
So, looking at the stats, Vela averaged during the season, and I don't know if they updated this for the final game or not, but Vela averaged 22 threes per game during the year, and in this game they took 25, so that's pretty close. They shot 35% from three for the year. In this game they shot 44, and what was the other one I had? Oh, in this game what jumps out to me is they took 25 threes out of 47 shots. Rarely is it going to be more than half like that. I think for the year here they had 700 three-point attempts out of 1,900 shots, so that's closer to 1 in 3. Mm-hmm. So I guess the size probably forced them outside a lot. But it's impressive to me that they made 11 of 25.
Well, there were times where they tried to dump the ball inside to Luis Salinas, their 4-year letterman. He's a post, 6'3" again, and he struggled to get a shot up over Nate Morris. There were a couple times where they looked a little bit hesitant to try to get something up over him and just kind of tossed it up and hoped for the best. But they didn't really get too much players scoring inside from their insides for them bigs. They got a couple of plays from some of their guards that just slashed to the basket. But they were making shots that they usually miss. That's why I kind of think that, I know the numbers might not seem too bad, but I think they've missed a lot of opportunities there that they usually make.
So did you feel like Vela gave this their best shot, or was there something that was missing from their game?
Yeah, I do. I think they played probably about the best game they could play, and that really showed, especially early in the first half when they were keeping the game close and really hanging with Lancaster. They within 10 points for most of the first half, and really looked like they had a chance to hang around. And it started to slip away from them. I think the coach mentioned that he had to go shorter on his rotation. I know Garza played 32 minutes and Ruiz played 29, so that's a key factor for them getting tired as the game went on. But I think they played strong in the first half.
We talked about that coming into the game, about whether they would be able to stick to the 5-in, 5-out, and you kind of thought that they would, but at what point did they sort of abandon that?
They didn't try it until I don't think they ever did it. I think their first one, they brought in one player, and then they brought in two, but they didn't go 5-in, 5-out at any point in the game. So I asked the coach about that after the game, and he said, yeah, they didn't really do it, and they just really try to stick to the starting 5 and try to give them a breather here and there, but they couldn't really do it, and it's weird because for most games that I've seen this season, they have done it. I think early in preseason last year, there were times where they might have abandoned it just to kind of tinker with different lineups or different matchups, but against Lancaster, they really just stuck with their starters.
Ryan Garza, one of those starters, played all 32 minutes, had 20 points, which is above his season average, but 7 turnovers. Did you feel like he played a good game, or what was your takeaways from his individual performance?
He, I think, was the best player on the court, but I wouldn't say he played his best game.
For Vela, right?
Yeah, for Vela. Alec Garza, part of their big 3, finished with 6 points or 5 points.
Who's that?
Alec De La Cruz, Alec De La Cruz finished with 5 points. Hector Ruiz had 13. I expect a little more scoring out of Alec in this game as part of their big 3, but I think Ryan really carried the load. Hector, a quiet 13. I don't really remember him making too much of an impact. It seemed like their guards kind of had a nice showing there with Ryan Garza, and they had one of their other smaller guards there, Chris Ochoa, played 15 minutes off the bench for them.
Hector had 4 of 8 threes, and I think they were a lot of them in the first half. I got 2 in the first quarter here. So it felt like he had an impact, especially early in the game.
I'm remembering the second half blowout when things just unraveled. So,
Stog, who was your most impressive Vela player in this game? Was there anybody who jumped out to you from them individually?
I will give a big shout out to Salinas. He picked up 2 fouls early, and I think that might have also had a little bit to do with some of the substitution problems they ran into. But there were spells of the game where he could defend Nate Morris and kind of hold him down just a little bit. I mean, obviously, there's not a lot you can do with a size differential like that, but he was showing himself well, and I think he did a good job of tiring Morris out a little bit, especially early in the game.
For De La Cruz, during the season, to be one of their big 3 and to put up some pretty impressive averages, and then in this game to struggle, does that just come down to running into some size, or what happened to him in this game? You touched on it a little bit, but what else did you see?
I would say that, but also the last couple games, I wouldn't say he had necessarily his best stretch of the season. He fouled out 3 games prior to that. after trying to guard Alamo Heights' best player. He got into foul trouble, didn't play most of the second half. Fouled out early in the fourth quarter, and then they went into overtime. But then the next game he came back, had a quiet outing. I think he had like 8 points, but I think he filled the stat sheet, but I guess he just didn't score a lot. And I think that's what you might expect from a member of their big three to kind of help there with the scoring load. But he didn't really do that too much, and I would just chalk that up as just a bad matchup for them with Lancaster having 3 D1 athletes and Vela just trying to scrap together and trying to make it somewhat competitive.
You said you saw some fatigue with guys like Garza and Ruiz down the stretch. Do you think it was a mistake for Rios to not use the kind of cycling he had before? Because to me it seems like, I don't know how well Vela's second group could hang with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see too in the box score that, that only Chris Ochoa, only one reserve, played more than 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And he played 15. So things tightened up, I think, for the first time in the playoffs because even in the regional tournament, they went 5 in, 5 out. And at least gave their starters 2 game minutes to rest before bringing them back in, so he would go 4 minutes, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 2 minutes. And in this game, he was really tight and didn't really give anyone else a look other than Chris Ochoa, who's probably the shortest player on the court and one of the fastest, so I could see why he would want to use him there and try to push the tempo against a more athletic, faster team like Lancaster.
So would you have done anything differently had you been coaching Vela, or did you think they came with the right approach?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's any approach that makes it any easier. I think it was a tough game from the beginning, and I think it was right to rely on Garza. He was about the only player on Vela who could consistently score in a way other than outside 3, and he was able to create, so I think you kind of had to play through him. I don't know that there would have been much of a benefit to going deeper on the bench. Like you said, I just don't think those guys could have hung with the Lancaster guys. They were just too big, too athletic, and too fast, and they might have done so much damage during those 2 minutes that they never would have been able to catch back up.
That being said, we mentioned the 7 turnovers with Garza, but Vela only turned it over 13 times as a team. Did they handle the pressure well, or what did you see there?
Better than I expected because I thought they would play scared. I've seen instances where Valley teams go up against some of the Houston area teams and play really scared and essentially play hot potato to try to get rid of the ball and never really get into their sets. That wasn't the case with Vela. I would say with Vela was more just missing opportunities that they usually get, whether it's floaters in the paint or just slashing and hitting those layups. So I don't think they were ever really struggled in terms of trying to take the ball off the court like we've seen other Valley teams do.
One of the things you wrote about coming from this game was that Vela had something of an opportunity that was dropped in their lap when Jacoby Pemberton got hurt for Lancaster. Obviously, you don't want to see that for the other kid, but for them to lose one of their better players, did you think that might have created an opening for Vela to actually win this game, or did you feel confident that they had a real shot at that point, or was it still too much?
Well, my jaw just dropped because I figured Vela, everything kind of broke right for Vela, and I figured this, if there was anything, because I remember when we were doing the podcast prior to the game, we were saying how what Vela's best shot was of winning this game. We were saying, well, if one of their 3 or all 3 of their D1 players go out, and just with him going out, he's their top player. He averaged near double-double. He was like at 20 points, 9 rebounds a game during the playoffs. When he went out, I figured that was Vela's best shot, trying to make it competitive. He's 6'6", a 6'6" guard, and just for a player of that athleticism and that height to go out, I figured that was the break Vela needed. But they didn't really miss much of anything when they brought in some of their bench players and helped fill that gap. He went out with a few minutes left in the second half and returned in the second. He returned, with a few minutes in the first half, came back in the second. Didn't score, only played like 4 or 5 minutes in the second half, but still, I think just having him out there kind of helped Lancaster just with distributing the ball. He wasn't much of a scorer, like we said, didn't score the rest of the way, but I think just his presence there helped him.
So did you ever feel like Vela had a shot in this game? At any point did you think they were in it?
It definitely got close there for a minute after Pemberton went down. I think they got it to within 6 maybe right after that.
They hit back-to-back threes, after he went down.
Yeah, and so they got it close there for a minute, and I thought maybe there was a chance, but I think it was really telling. The very next possession, they dumped the ball down inside. Nate Morris just went over everybody and got an easy layup, and it was kind of like the momentum killer because Vela had scratched and clawed all the way back to get it to within 6, and then there was just a dagger right in their heart when they realized you still can't stop Nate Morris no matter what you do.
I have it right here. So when Pemberton went out, Garza hit a 3, and then Chris Ochoa got a 3, cut it to 35-29, and then Lancaster pushed it back into 12, hitting in at halftime. So with Pemberton out, they were up 12 for a little bit. They were down. They were up 6, and then they were up 12 again, going into halftime, and then just never looked back.
So Lancaster's down one of their best players.
Mm-hmm.
Vela has an incredible shooting night, and they still lose by 21.
Mm-hmm.
So if this game was played like 300 times, would Vela win one of them, or is this just an unwinnable matchup?
The matchup on paper doesn't look good at all when you consider just their height and just their experience, because they won state the year before, so they have that experience of playing on this level, whereas Vela was here for the first time. But yeah, I don't see any way in which Lancaster would have lost this game, just because even considering the circumstances, they didn't shoot well from threes. They still had enough to win by a sizable amount against Vela.
Is there even a scenario you can draw up where they could have won this game?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you never say never, because, I mean, if we're playing it 300 times, you never know what could happen. And, I mean, if this is a really good shooting performance, they could have something better. But, let's not forget that Lancaster went on to win the state title, and this is a really, really dominant team. I mean, that game wasn't close to the state final. So they're a really dominant team, 3 Division I players, and, there's not a lot of teams in the state that can hang with that team, let alone a team from, like, Vela.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm ragging on Vela here. We gushed over them a lot last week, and they deserve it. They deserve every bit of it. But certainly we see here the kind of challenges that they run into when they face teams from other parts of the state, and it really would have been really, really hard for them to compete. And part of that is something that you wrote about in your column that ran the day after the game, about just generally the size in the Valley is going to be somewhat prohibitive for teams making it to this level again, or ever having success beyond what Vela was able to achieve. Why don't you give me the rundown of what you wanted to get across in that column and what jumped out to you?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to John, our girls basketball beat writer today, and he was telling me that it's a similar situation in girls basketball, which is just that the height in this area just doesn't really compare with some of the bigger cities in the state. And it's not just the height, right? It's also the athleticism, the speed, and then there's another big obvious one, which is the resources. And I think kids in the Valley do everything they can, and they do the best with what they have. But I mean, it's hard to compete with some of the things these schools in Dallas or Houston are able to provide their students, and it just it kind of makes it a little bit of a disadvantage, and it makes you wonder if that's something they can overcome.
Mario, do you agree the production or the ceiling kind of capped here for teams from the Valley?
Yeah, I mean they got, I guess, everything broke right to when they played Laredo Nixon, because Laredo Nixon beat LBJ Austin, which had more size, and you kind of compare them to Lancaster in a way, just a lot of athleticism, a lot of size, whereas Laredo Nixon was the perfect matchup for Vela. No one was taller than any Vela player. The tallest player was 6'3", kind of wiry kid, but he had an off night. And the game before against Alamo Heights, they didn't really pose much of a threat physically, but they were just the smart basketball team that made good decisions. I mean, I didn't agree with the amount of 3-pointers they took. They kept feeding the ball to Will Schmacker, who went like 0 for 10 in that game. So I don't agree with that, to just chucking threes.
Boy.
Yeah, to live and die by the three. But I think Vela had the perfect matchups in regionals to win, and they took advantage. And it wasn't even just like by a little bit. Like they were up on Laredo Nixon 25-6 in the first quarter.
Right.
Yeah, just one of the things that I was wondering about that, just because we were talking about height and just how the Valley matches up there. But if you think, well, if Jonathan Sanchez and DJ Johnson from Memorial, if they were in the Edinburg Vela school zone, like how much different would this look? Because they're the team that has the most size in the Valley, and that's what's hurt the Valley in most cases. So if they were just on Vela, just how much differently would this look? I think that's we'll never know, obviously, but I mean, it's just it's a good.
Yeah, but you're talking about forming a Valley All-Star team to try to go to state. That's
no, but who was it? We were talking in the office. Someone was, I think it was John was saying, John, our girls basketball beat writer, that was saying that he was talking with another girls basketball coach, and she had said that even if you put together the Valley's girls All-Star team and took them to state or regionals, they wouldn't win. But I don't think you could say that for boys basketball, because considering the run that Vela had, if you were to put DJ and Jonathan, you have the size to at least try to make it not so lopsided like it was in this game.
You think that makes up 20 points?
Yeah. Like Luis Salinas was 6'3", and how much did he have in this game? Luis Salinas had 2 points.
Right.
6'3".
Like,
If you had like a Jonathan Sanchez who's 6'6", 6'7", and a DJ Johnson who's 6'6",
they're still shorter than the other guys.
yeah, but I mean,
3-4 inches.
yeah, but it's not going to be a 21, 16-2, like you saw in that game. Like I would think Jonathan Sanchez or DJ Johnson would make up that difference, not 2 points, but they'd be able to. Even if they just had their averages, I think it'd be a more balanced matchup.
It would be closer, but I still don't think that would be enough, honestly.
I don't know if it beats them, but it makes it a little more respectable.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could make it. I mean, against Lancaster specifically, I don't think they have a chance. But it would be a formidable team. I think there's some validity to what Mario's saying, that maybe a boys team from the Valley would have a better chance than a girls team from the Valley.
An all-star team.
An all-star team. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think there is some validity to that, but I still don't think it would have been enough. And I think there are some teams that it would still be a huge challenge against, even with your DJ Johnsons or the Sanchez brothers or whatever.
See, for what it lacked in size, though, Vela is still sort of a once-in-a-generation kind of team where they had this easy path that you talked about, relatively easy path. Then they were able to have so many seniors on the roster who had come up together and had played together because it was a young school that they had a lot of experience playing with each other already. And they were essentially playing below a classification because, as we see, they're going to get moved up to 6A with the enrollment that they have now. So that's a lot of things that are kind of the perfect storm for a Valley team to be able to make it to state.
Yeah.
Knowing all that, what would you say is the over-under on year for it to be, even money that a Valley team makes it again? Would you say, if I said 20, 25,
yeah,
would you say over-under is about even, or would you say higher, or would you say lower, or what would you say?
I would think in that time frame you can return, and I would say it only because we've seen kids from outside the Valley transfer in, like with McGowan High.
Josh McGowan?
Yeah, he came here. When I was covering sports in the Brownsville area, they had a kid who transferred from Dallas. The receiver was 6'6". I think he's now at Navy, I think if I'm not mistaken, but he's playing there. But if you get some of these kids transferring from out of the Valley, I think it helps them. And we never know who's going to come here for their senior year or whose parent is going to get a job here and ends up helping one of these teams. So I wouldn't totally dismiss it, but I think to rely on just all these homegrown players, I don't know when I would see that.
Well, do you think that? I mean, you'd have to bring in. Like, they went up against a team that had 3 Division I players. Like, you'd have to bring in multiple kids who would have to come to the same school at the same window to make that big of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. I think
do you think some of these schools are like 1-star player away? I don't know if I see that as much.
No, but I mean, I would see it as maybe 2-star players.
Yeah,
like
but that's asking a lot from the transfer market.
Yeah. With that, I don't know. Like we said, everything I think kind of broke right for Edinburg Vela, but you can kind of point to situations where they could have lost a lot earlier than they did, and we're not even talking about this to begin with, because in the second round they were down. I forget what it was. They were down double digits, and then went on to outscore the team like 25-12, for example, to win. And then in the third round, in the regional quarterfinal, or the regional semifinal, or the regional quarterfinal, or no, semifinal, they beat Alamo Heights, but they were down in that game too. They were down in the fourth quarter and lost Alec de la Cruz, one of their big 3, and they still won that game in overtime. So there were a lot of. It wasn't just like it was a cakewalk to state. Like they overcame a lot of deficits to try to get to this point. But going back to the transferred players, yeah, I don't know if 1 or 2 players helps them win a state title, but I think it helps it bring it a little bit closer to where they're not the overwhelming underdog heading into the game like Vela was going into this game.
So you'd say it's 50-50 that by 2025, in the next 10 years, another team makes it? Well, I would have to put the number higher than that.
Well, I think we're kind of forgetting the lower classifications like Santa Rosa.
I'm asking about 5A, 6A.
Yeah, 5A. I wouldn't dismiss it just because we don't know who's transferring in.
I would have to go at least 20. You'd have to give me at least 20-30 for me to feel
really?
like it's 50-50. I think this is like a really rare, special thing that just happened.
Well, I don't think we know who's there in middle school. Like maybe there's another middle school group that is coming in like this group, and will go into whichever school and help make it good in 4 years. Like we don't
Right,
know
but like
either.
if this group came in again now, if we could just wind back the clock and they'd have to play in 6A, we don't even know if they would be able to make it.
Yeah.
This was like a really what would you set the, you know what I'm talking about, the year where you would say it's like 50-50 that somebody makes it by then?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say like obviously the rest of the country's getting bigger, stronger, faster, and it seems like that might not be happening in the same way down here in the valley. Well, on the other hand, the game is moving a lot more towards 3-point shooting, and I think that if there was a team assembled that had a lot of good shooters, they might not need that height. So I think that it is possible to build a successful team here in the valley. You just kind of got to have exactly the right pieces and put it together exactly the right way, because I think a team with good 3-point shooting and good defense could make a deep run against some of these taller teams, because 3 always counts for more than 2.
That was certainly the formula for Vela. It's going to be tough to replicate, I think, but
I think so too.
we saw that it certainly can work if you get good matchups, and if you can hit your threes, then you can potentially do that. Mario, in the more immediate future, what is next for this Vela team? They're losing a lot of people, right?
Yeah, they're losing 11 seniors, but 2/3 of their big three comes back, led by Ryan Garza. So,
Garza's coming back?
Yeah, he's a junior.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so not knowing who's really coming back for the other teams, or I guess Sherry Lynn, I'm not sure. They lost one of their bigs. They didn't make the playoffs this year. I'm trying to see who would even challenge Edinburg Vela. I think you could pencil them in for a district title. Mission Vets had an off year. It's really Valley View, Roma, and Valley View, Roma, and who else?
Rio Grande City, Mission Vets,
No, yeah, they didn't make the playoffs.
Pioneer.
Pioneer's good, so I think Pioneer would be Vela's biggest challenge next year.
But is
Well,
that
no,
really
different
next
districts.
year? Yeah.
Oh,
Who's the
no, they should. Oh,
Who's
yeah,
the,
yeah.
Which
yeah.
Laredo team do they have? Is it the good one that they played just now?
Let's see.
That would be interesting.
Laredo, Roma.
Is this is this how you figure this out?
Yeah, like someone tweeted it.
There's no way that's the best way to do this. Let's go to UIL alignments. Let's talk. While we're doing this, what do you think is next for Vela? You get to see him play. You have a little idea what's coming back.
Oh man, I think Ryan Garza coming back is a big factor. He was really exciting to watch. He's really talented, and he can score in a lot of different ways. He presents a lot of big threats. It'll be interesting to see how it transfers over in 6A. I think it'll be a big challenge for him. And like you said, they got a ton of people graduating, but so it's just tough to know what the underclassmen are going to look like and who's going to be coming in to make a difference. But I think it could be tough for them. I think they could have a couple down years, because one of their biggest things, I think, was how many seniors they had and how tight-knit that group was. And I don't know if you can replicate that just because you have a couple carryovers. What was it, 11 seniors they had on their team? I mean, that's a lot to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot Vela's moving up to 6A, so they're obviously not in the 5A Laredo district. But
So they will win that district. Edinburg North will give them
that
a
was a good
run.
team.
Hmm?
Edinburg
Yeah.
North was good, but that seems like it.
The Kobe Pattersons, yeah.
Edinburg
Yeah.
High wasn't bad,
The
or they
Kobe
were not one of the
Pattersons.
Yeah, they weren't one of the big four, right?
They made the playoffs, but I mean,
So they were a pretty decent team then.
they'll be in the playoffs. Edinburg High, Edinburg North, Vela, and PSJ, either PSJ or PSJ North.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they should have a pretty easy time with that. Who's the second of the big three that's coming back? Ruiz is the one who graduated, right?
Hector Ruiz graduated, or is going to graduate,
So
and
Vela
Alec Cruz
is
and Ryan
coming back.
Garza.
Okay.
Yeah.
So things could be all right for them.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about to look ahead for next season or to recap this year before we get out of here?
I think the crowd is worth mentioning. They had 9,800 people at the game. An overwhelming amount, I think, was Edinburg Vela fans, which, by all accounts, was the biggest crowd for the state tournament at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. So that, I think, is newsworthy. The Valley traveled, or the Edinburg Vela fans in the Valley traveled well to that game. Again, by all accounts, it was the loudest game as I just saw it, like on social media. They were saying that was the loudest game. So one of my concerns about that game was that in the Alamo Dome, I thought it would look really empty, but they filled up a lot of the seats behind the benches. So I thought they had a really good turnout. And yeah, I mean, no shame they lost to the state champion again, two-time state champion, which won by 3 points 2 days later. So yeah, Vela stayed there for a couple more days after that. The difference, I think, between this year and last year was last year when they lost in the regional tournament. everyone was in tears, whereas the other Valley teams, kind of had this attitude where they were happy to be there. And this year, I think most of the players kind of realized that they were going to lose to Lancaster, but you could see there were some players like Ryan Garza who was like devastated because I think he felt that they had a shot, even though most of us wouldn't think so. But there were some players on Vela who felt that they still could have extended their season a little bit more. But I think for the most part, they were happy to get this far and get their state medal after the game ended.
What impact do you feel like the crowd had? Were they nervous, or did they just feed off it, or what? How did that affect them?
I think they fed off of it. If anything, they were there well before the game. I think they opened the stadium an hour before the game, and it seemed like all the attention was really on Vela. Like I think Lancaster might have had one section where it was maybe 10 rows deep, whereas Vela had the rest of it behind it and behind the other bench. So I think when Vela scored, you could hear them kind of drown out any of the Lancaster cheers or boos.
Estelle, you have any last takeaways from this Vela thing or the season, or anything you want to talk about before we get out of here?
I was really impressed by Vela. They like Mario kind of said, they were never scared from the spotlight, and they gave it their all the way up until you could tell the game was over. And it was just nice to see the team fight that hard and be that into it and believe that they belonged there. I think that was really what took them so far in the first place, was just believing that they belonged.
And a lot of opposing coaches there too. From I saw the road coach, the Palm View coach, a lot of Los Fresno's coach said he was going to that game too. So a lot of support Valley-wide.
Absolutely. We will be talking about Vela again on this podcast very soon, I have imagined, with the all-area teams coming out. That'll be, what are we talking about, that next Saturday? So like near the end of March it'll be coming out. We also can follow along on Twitter for everything RGV Sports at RGV Sports. We still got soccer season going. Baseball and softball are, I guess, in the middle of district play right about now. So always good stuff to follow along there. And you can follow us individually. Mario's going to have all the softball stuff at Mario_Aguirre. Is that right?
Word.
I'll have the soccer stuff at Greg Luca and mostly at RGV Sports. And so we'll have whatever he's got. Where's that again?
Saul_Monitor.
So that's where you can follow him. We have all of our stories going up daily on RGVSports.com. That's where you can get more in-depth looks at what we have going on and where you can find the links to this podcast. I believe we're still trying to get it going on iTunes, but
Still trying.
that would be John's forte more than mine, so I'll have to cede to him on whether we can get that done or not. Either way, it'll always be on RGVSports.com and on YouTube, so you can find it at either of those places. And we are on Facebook at RGVSports.com. I think I've plugged all of our stuff.
Periscope.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true, actually. They're not all watching on Periscope.
Yeah,
if you just listen to the podcast, you can always come hang out with us on Periscope. It is kind of in the middle of the night because we do it after we get done with the paper, but that's another way to get involved and have your voice heard and voice some questions. Very often I'll keep an eye on it, and if anything comes across, I will try to work it into the conversation or just outright ask it. So that's a good way to get involved with us, and hopefully that'll be something you guys can do when we get to our all-area show in a couple weeks. So we will talk to you then, and thank you for listening. I forgot which one was the stop button.
I thought it was like a moment of silence.
We had a viewer who wants to know how you think Vela would have done against Dunbar, the other team in the state tournament. Do you know anything about them? Can you comment on that? I certainly don't have any idea.
So you're basically saying talk about Dunbar. I can't talk about Dunbar.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could talk about them from the...
They look scary.
You go to Google Images. All right. No, we don't have an answer for you. Mario went to Google Images, so I can tell you we have no answer. Let's go to Max Preps.
Look at all those trophies.
They look scary. Did they play in the final, or did they play in the semi?
They played in the semifinal and they lost 101 to 73.
Let's see what I can figure out here. 101 to 73. Okay, that's not super competitive. And then that was the team that Lancaster beat.
Right.
I bet I can find...
The guy Brigham scored 27 points.
That's incredible.
That's a lot. 27 and 12 this guy had. For Dunbar.
12.
In the losing effort. Strong live. 12 and 31. Oh.
Let's see what this roster looks like. We don't have any heights on the roster. Do they have heights on there?
Nah.
We got... Who scored that many points?
Quentin Brigham.
Greg is on the wrong page.
Fort Worth Dunbar.
Hold on.
Fort Worth.
Fort Myers.
You're on Google Images.
Greg, get it together. Greg.
You of all people can shut up. You are actually useless to me.
Greg, you need to pipe down over there.
What are you watching, a YouTube video?
Yes. Do my homework right.
Did you set your alarm off again?
Are you in the right state this time?
Yes, they have. Okay, they maxed out at 6'6". They had 2 6'6" guys, 6'4". Who is the? Oh, Brigham is 6'6". He's sort of a front court player. So if their dominant front court player is really good at basketball, that could be problematic.
He's pretty thin,
He is. He's 175 according to the roster.
which means he's like 150.
That's a good point. They don't have stats though. I can't go too much farther than this. But they went 29-4, 14-0 in district. How'd they do in the playoffs?
They shot 2 of 10 from 3, so about what Lancaster did.
They were pretty dominant in the playoffs, except for the second round. They only won by 2. Or no, it's the third round. I'm sorry, they only won by 2.
Ooh. Look at Dunbar.
Okay, do you have an answer?
Yeah, they would have struggled against their athleticism. Look at this.
So you think the athleticism of Dunbar would have been too much for Vela to handle? Which team are they?
The green team.
Are you sure?
Look at this.
That's a steal. That's a run-of-the-mill steal. I saw Ryan
No,
Garcia.
there was a block right now. There was a block. Hold on.
If you guys want to follow along, you can just Google. You can no. What do you have to do? You have to Google images it first,
No, go on YouTube.
and then from there you go to YouTube.
Go on
and just
YouTube.
link you directly to YouTube.
Great. Just type in Dunbar 2016. You'll see a game from 2 months ago.
This
Well,
is
you
probably
might
the
have-
Fort
you might
Myers
have
team.
done Fort
TBH.
Myers, yeah.
You sure? No.
I said I don't know. I'm just asking. Yeah, you got no way of knowing, huh? Huh? You
Wait,
don't know.
Paul L. Dunbar. How many Dunbars do you
Fayette County, Texas. Yeah, that's you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Now we do think Dunbar would have been problematic for Vela too on an athleticism standpoint, which is what it comes down to with a lot of these matchups.
TBH.
TBH. SMH TBH.
BRB.
BRB next week.
Yeah.
Anything else, Periscope Universe? Anybody even watching this? Oh, we got 9.
Who are we competing against at 12:30 1 a.m.? What's on right now?
WWE Network,
DVRs,
DVRs.
Twitch.tv.
Netflix and chill.
No one's Netflix and chill.
All
on
good
a
answers.
weekday. You can't Netflix and chill on a weekday.
That's not true.
But this
Mario.
time,
You're not doing it right.
well, it's like, unless, I don't know, if you have a 9 to 5, you can.
Peace out, people. We'll catch you next time.